you have to choose either or. So if you go with optimizing glucose oxidation, go with mildronate and DADA. And if you want to optimize fatty acid oxidation, go with Cardarine in combination with carnitine, which helps with the shuttling of triglycerides into the mitochondria, again, for energy production. Vigorous Steve here. Welcome to the 6th part of the Optimized Endurance Deep Dive video series, which is already the 4th part of the performance enhancing drug segments. And it might actually be the last part because it seems that attention span and interest is going down with each consecutive episode. And honestly, I think we covered the majority of the performance enhancing drugs, which are known to boost and optimize endurance and stamina. But I'm open to suggestions. If you want to see a 7th part, let me know what I forgot in these previous video series, or if there's something else you would want me to highlight specifically. In parts 1 and 2, we discussed the over-the-counter supplements. In part 3, we discussed hormone replacement therapy and optimizing mitochondrial functioning. Part 4 was about optimizing oxygen carrying capacity, which I actually forgot. One performance enhancing drugs, which we'll highlight in this video. In part 5, optimizing cardiac function. And in this part, we'll discuss how to optimize skeletal muscle function and optimizing lactic acid removal. And then in part 7, again, if you would like to see it, we can discuss how to optimize the central nervous system with stimulants or nootropics. But I think it's better if I just include that in the 3rd part of the Optimized Entrepreneurial Nootropic Stack Deep Dive video series, which is now slowly being released. I could also discuss how to reduce inflammation with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, corticosteroids, glucocorticoids, biological anti-inflammatory agents, which are specifically used for autoimmune and inflammatory conditions, and then even the unclassifiable performance-enhancing drugs. But I'm open to suggestions. So again, if you want to see a part 7, let me know down below. Otherwise, this will be the last part, and we'll incorporate some of the other compounds in a different deep dive video series. And before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And you can support the channel by joining either the YouTube or Patreon memberships, where you can vote for following deep dive videos, and join the weekly Vigorous Q&A, which is always on Saturday. Plenty of time to get your questions in before we go public, and it turns into a super chat super flood. Let's get started with optimizing skeletal muscle function, discussing Diisopropylamine Dichloroacetate, abbreviated to DADA, which actually works within the mitochondria. So I should have included this in the optimizing mitochondrial function part a couple parts ago. But at that time, I didn't really have enough time to do research on Diisopropylamine Dichloroacetate. This works by inhibiting the pyruvate dehydrogenase kinase 4 enzymes, and thus glucose metabolism for adenosine triphosphate production goes up, but adenosine triphosphate recycling also increases. So DADA basically gives you unlimited energy. Luckily, DADA is not included in the 2023 or upcoming 2024 version of the WADA prohibited list or monitoring program. So you're still technically a half natty if you go with increasing your ATP synthesis and ATP recycling by using DADA intramuscularly. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find the half-life of Diisopropylamine Dichloroacetate, but I think the half-life is reasonably short because all of the people that I talked to that use DADA intramuscularly, they administer that directly before their training session in order to improve their endurance. And it seems that endurance is elevated for a multitude of different hours, but I don't think, again, based on the research that I've done so far, I don't think that DADA lasts a multitude of days. So ideally, you inject it maybe once or twice per week. Again, dosages can be between 20 milligrams up to 100 milligrams intramuscularly. And then if needed, you can start ramping up the dose, again, depending on how your performance lasts during your endurance sessions. But it seems that the effective dose for bodybuilding purposes or endurance sports purposes is much, much lower. Again, I haven't really talked to so many people who use Diisopropylamine Dichloroacetate themselves. I'd heard it through the grapevine here and there, but it seems that the dosage range varies greatly from individual to individual. Let's go over the biological functions and effects. DADA was actually used for chronic liver disease treatments back in the day. It was used to be a part of panjamic acid, which was marketed as a vitamin B15. Now, panjamic acid isn't really a B vitamin. It seems that current formulations don't really contain DADA, but instead N,N-dimethylglycine, abbreviated to DMG. I don't think that it has any benefits regarding endurance and stamina, but I might be mistaken. I didn't research N,N-dimethylglycine separately. So back then, it was used for chronic liver disease treatment in the form of vitamin B15, and it might have potential medical applications for toxoplasmosis, cerebral vascular disorders, influenza, liver complications, including non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, certain cancers, metabolic disorders, and even multi-organ failure. Now, how does it work? DADA is a pyruvate dehydrogenase kinase 4 enzyme inhibitor, which allows the body to convert pyruvate into acetyl coenzyme A at a higher rate. And thus, it plays a crucial role in glucose metabolism and ATP synthesis. But that also promotes the oxidation of glucose for energy production and increases the recycling of ATP, substantially increasing intracellular ATP concentrations. But this also means that DADA can act as a potent vasodilator because by increasing ATP concentrations intracellularly, some of this can spill into the bloodstream, convert into adenosine monophosphate, and adenosine monophosphate is a very potent vasodilator. Again, when I talk to people who've used DADA in the past, it doesn't seem to be such a potent vasodilator if you use it in the lower end of the dosage ranges. But if you start building it up, I'm sure that you can get some vasodilating effects out of it. And for the people who've used aminoasylum, stampede, or super shredder containing actual ATP or AMP in one of these formulations, the vasodilating effect, substantial, right? So this basically mitigates the use of injectable pre-workout containing ATP. You can directly improve ATP synthesis with DADA instead. And I think this will work particularly well with a compound like mildronate, who shifts energy consumption from fatty acids and glucose purely to glucose. If you combine that with DADA, again, potentially on paper, it does make sense, then the overall ATP synthesis should be greatly heightened. And the last beneficial effect of DADA is detoxifying effect. Apparently, DADA can assist hepatic detoxification of heavy metals, nitrates, and organophosphates through the formulation of chelate-like compounds. And of course, chelated compounds are excreted through the kidneys through a normal metabolic process. So DADA looks highly promising. From the people that I've talked to, it seems that it has a pronounced effect, especially if the dosage is a little bit higher. But I would rather have you do a lot of research because, again, there's not so much scientific evidence out of it. I can't really find so much anecdotal reports on the internet. And I've talked to people sparingly who actually use it. It seems to be quite a niche compound, but since it's not included in the monitoring program or the prohibited list of this year and next year, it seems to be one of those compounds that is really going to make a difference if you combine it with some of the other performance-enhancing drugs, which we discussed in previous parts. Moving over to GW501516, which also optimizes skeletal functioning. Now, this one is prohibited under 4.4 metabolic modulators, where it's specifically mentioned GW1516, Cardarine, or Endurobol. Let's see, it's a peroxisome peroxylator activated receptor delta agonist, and thus shift energy production mostly to fatty acid oxidation, albeit that glucose metabolism and oxidation will still take place within the mitochondria as part of the Krebs cycle. So I don't think it's a good idea to combine Cardarine with something like mildronate or Diisopropylamine Dichloroacetate, DADA. You have to choose either or. So if you go with optimizing glucose oxidation, go with mildronate and DADA. And if you want to optimize fatty acid oxidation, go with Cardarine in combination with carnitine, which helps with the shuttling of triglycerides into the mitochondria, again, for energy production. The half-life of Cardarine is actually quite long, 16 to 24 hours, albeit that some sources mention that the half-life is only 12 hours. It has a long-lasting effect, but it seems that after you dose it orally, most of the effects are quite acute. So I would advise everybody to take Cardarine 30 minutes to 60 minutes pre-workout in 10 to 30 milligram dosages. Now, if you have multiple training sessions over the day, I would not exceed 40 milligrams Cardarine per day. So ideally, you would take 20 milligrams Cardarine for your first session of the day and the second session of the day. And thus, stamina increases, endurance is boosted, and fatty acid oxidation. And if you take carnitine and some lipolytic agents like clenbuterol or growth hormone, will greatly improve overall fat burning effects. Now, I'm sure you guys are all intimately familiar with Cardarine because it's been on the market for a very long time and it's very popular as a fat burner. So it has fat burning effects, improved energy metabolism. It increases oxygen utilization because apparently it can increase the production of nitric oxide, which improves vasodilation and improves blood flow. And it has the capability to delay fatigue because the metabolic waste products of fatty acid oxidation are not as deleterious to reduce your stamina and endurance compared to some of the metabolic waste products that occur from glucose metabolism. So it's a very beneficial compound that has been used for ages to improve skeletal muscle function, improve endurance, and reduce fatigue.